Good morning. Students, staff, faculty, alumni, distinguished guests, Justice and Mrs. Kennedy, President Brodhead, members of our Board of Visitors, members of the trustees of Duke University, friends of the Duke Law School. Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us this day to dedicate these two beautiful buildings, these two wonderful spaces, the Goodson Library and the Starr Commons, and the commitments and the community that they symbolize. It is a creation story that we tell and celebrate today, a story about the light and the word and how good it is to experience their happy unification. Creation implies creators, and we have many to thank. We thank our principal donors, J. Michael Goodson, Stanley Starr, Elizabeth Starr, and the Duke Endowment. The Goodson Library and the Starr Commons stand because of their generosity and foresight, and this morning we honor their vision and their loyalty, and we thank them for the light that they have brought to us and to our endeavors. My predecessor, Kate Bartlett, had the deep understanding of the law school to see the importance of the new library and commons to the work and to the culture of the faculty and the student body. Thank you, Kate, for your dedication and foresight. You couldn't be with us here last night because you were in Washington with our appointments committee interviewing prospective young faculty members. So please, everybody, would you rise and join me in showing our appreciation and gratitude. Professors Richard Danner and Tom Metzloff undertook the hard work of uniting the architect's designs to the needs of the school. Their care and attention is in every detail. And many others sacrificed and labored to see this project through to completion. The contractors, the craftsmen, the architects, alumni, students, and staff. And we thank them all. I thank Justice and Mrs. Kennedy for being with us here today. It is not easy for a Supreme Court justice in November to make the time to come to a law school, and we deeply appreciate the effort that he made to be with us today. This is the third building that he and I have dedicated together, and I think, Justice Kennedy, this may be our capstone project. As a fellow Sacramentan raised in the valley formed by the Sierra Nevada, he knows much about the play of light across stone walls. And as a leader of the judiciary and the legal profession, he knows the importance of law study and law scholarship to our forward progress as a profession and as a nation. It is so good to have you here. The library and the commons are symbolic and inspirational spaces. The Goodson Library celebrates and supports the life of the mind, the hard work of scholarship and rational inquiry. It is a place of contradictions, quiet and excitement, peaceful reflection, and the agonizing grasping for understanding. My wife, Nancy, asked me why agonizing, and I said, "You didn't go to law school." It stands apart from the world, and yet it is very much of the world, as our new windows reflect and reveal. It reminds us of the deep faith of all lawyers in the Anglo-American tradition that law is above all else a learned profession. The Star Commons provides a place in which we can gather as a community, as we do today, to exchange ideas and to connect with friends and with colleagues. It is a space that supports and makes tangible the community that is unique to Duke Law School. Already it has provided the setting for programs and events that have enlivened the life of the law school. Already it has attracted colleagues from around campus to the law school. Already it has become a central part of our daily lives. All of this creation is good, but there is more. These two light-filled spaces represent our belief that law study, like law practice, is a communal activity that belongs in a university. From the graceful windows of the library and the commons, we see the spires of Duke University, and we remind ourselves of the place of the law school in the university and in the vision, the remarkable vision of the remarkable founding family. As James B. Duke directed in the indenture of the Duke Endowment, the gift and trust which led to the creation of Duke University, the new university was to offer a course of study with special reference to the training of preachers, teachers, lawyers, and physicians, because these are most in the public eye, and by precept and by example can do most to uplift mankind. Thus, from its inception, this university has recognized the central importance of law study to the university. Justice Holmes had the perception and belief, which we share, that there are few important questions pertaining to human affairs and that arise from academic study which cannot be approached through the lens of the law. Our library and our commons now stand as an invitation to the rest of the university to come to participate in the intellectual life of this law school. On the corner of Tower View and Science Drive, in the very heart of the Sanford Public Policy School, the Nicholas School of the Environment, the Fuqua School of Business, we celebrate the interdisciplinary study of law. If we are to train lawyers to help in the uplift of mankind, they must be up to the challenges of our times. And those challenges do not live in isolation in any one discipline or approach. Any profound solution to our financial system crisis, for example, is going to require an understanding of law and business, accounting, psychology, history, and political economy. The balance between national security and civil liberties, between economic growth and environmentally sound practices, all of these require multidisciplinary approaches so that the lawyers, statesmen, and stateswomen who will be making many of the decisions that will affect the future of this nation must be people who are trained in these various approaches. So it is in this spirit that we welcome our colleagues from across Duke University into our new home. And we ask them to join us in seeking the knowledge that may serve our society, in seeking those new ideas that may uplift us as we do our part by precept and by example to train and to inspire the next generation of leaders. A space like this calls out the best in us, and it is a challenge. Let us strive to be worthy of the trust and the hope that these lovely new buildings represent, and let there always be light. Now, we have a very distinguished group of speakers here this morning. First, we will hear from Duke University's 9th president, Richard H. Brodhead. President Brodhead came to Duke University after a long tenure, distinguished at Yale College. He is a leader of higher education in this country. Following President Brodhead, we will hear from Professor Metzloff and Professor Danner, and we appreciate the skill and patience and dedication that they have brought to this project. Jillian Harrison is a second-year law student and is the vice president of our Duke Bar Association. She will speak on behalf of the student body. And our graduate, of whom we are so very proud, Judge Allyson Duncan of the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, will have the honor of introducing our most distinguished guest here this morning, Justice Anthony M. Kennedy. President Brodhead.
I welcome you all to this wonderful occasion. I thank you, Mr. Dean, for your very eloquent words. I am uplifted by the sight of my first dean, as I might say, Kate Bartlett in the front row, and I offer my special thanks to you, Justice Kennedy, for coming and adding such luster to this occasion. Let me begin with a proposition that is true but paradoxical and which you might even find irritating. It is this: if I were setting out to build a great law school, I'm not positive I would start with the building. And this for the reason that if we think of what law and the study of law essentially is, its essence lies in a way of thinking, or since we mean not just a way of thinking, but a group of people who learn to operate and contend and agree within a way of thinking, and we also mean the transmission of a way of thinking, we could really say that the essence of a law school lies in a culture of thinking or something of that sort. And it is, of course, as you all know, and it is what drew you to this profession and career, it is the special privilege of the law that absolutely everything in the world is the material for the law. Intimate quarrels between individuals, conflicts between individuals and institutions, conflicts among institutions, publics, privates, nationals, internationals. There's nothing that involves more than one person that is not the business potentially of the law. But nothing becomes the business of the law until it is drawn inside the way of thinking of the law. And that's, I suppose, what a law school prepares people to do. So if I set out to build a great law school, as I say, I'm not positive I would start with the building. I would want to start by building a certain kind of faculty, a certain kind of student body, a high degree of interactivity between people in the school and people in the world who would put one in touch with all the aspects of experience that law will be called to deal on. And now that you have assented to that proposition, I will come to my second. Which is that if one should have the good fortune to establish the real foundation of a law school, which is not a building, but rather a culture of thought, and if you should be able to develop that to a very high degree, nevertheless, the day might occur to you when you could say to yourself, but wouldn't it be nice to have a nice building too? This is a day that arrived in the history of this university, but not infinitely remotely in the history of this university, if I can say. And since I came here, I didn't mean to tell you this, but I will. My first visit to the law school was in my last interview to be president of this place. I needed to be taken to a secret place to meet the search committee, and I was hustled in the back bottom of the law school. Sarah Beal is nodding because, of course, she was there. This was extremely mysterious, it seems to me. What was this place? But since the day I arrived here, it has been the strange nature of the law school that its building keeps metamorphosing. Think of the things that have happened. A new wing stretched out that way, all those great new classrooms and meeting rooms in the front, and now we celebrate the great new library we opened on Thursday, and this great common space today. And when you reach the point when a great law school has a great building, you realize it really wasn't only an ornament, it really is an enabler of things. And so it had a function. It was not secondary after all. And when I came here to have lunch a week ago Friday and found that I could easily run into law students, law faculty, public policy faculty, business faculty, I saw that this building was doing its work of enablement. Now, my third proposition, it really is my last. You don't start a law school with a building, but someday you need a building, and when you get one, you discover you needed it more than you ever realized, or it could do more for you than you thought. But the process of getting from 2 to 3 involves certain elements. It involves protraction. Rome was not built in a day, but this law school edition was really not built in a day. It involves disruption. We have had the great revival of the work of Schumpeter in modern times and the phrase creative destruction, which I hope is what you thought was going on around here in recent years. It involves a community needing to pull together around a vision and have the discipline and leadership to pursue that vision. And of course, it took a lot of friends to get that vision enacted. And then came the day, David Levy walked me through your construction on the 9th of August. School was just about to open. There was a big red mud pile in front of the building here. In here, the slate was half laid, and in the next part, as you know, there was a terrazzo floor. Do you know how terrazzo floors are created? Many little pebbles are poured into cement, and then they're ground and ground and ground until they become smooth. We were at the beginning of the grinding in that process. And so when I say disruption, construction is beautiful when it's finished, but it's work when it's going on. But the work all being accomplished, the grass rolled out, the trees arrived, the fern garden, the camellias. No wonder you invoke Genesis. And they saw that it was good. I conclude by simply wanting to say 2 things, to express my gratitude as a member of this community and the university's gratitude through me to all who've given this leadership through this project, to all who've given the great support, many, many, many of you, but in particular the Duke Endowment and the people who have become my good friends through this process, Mike Goodson, who we celebrated on Thursday, and Stanley and Elizabeth Starr. And then then, having thanked those who made this possible, just to sit here today and take the pleasure of thinking of all the years and decades when the life of people who come here to learn the culture of thinking that is the law will be improved and enriched and enlivened by the facilities we open today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Tom Metzloff. It's a pleasure to be here. It's the culmination of really a lot of dreams. And speaking of Field of Dreams, a movie many of you saw, there's a great line when God, speaking to Kevin Costner, says, "If you build it, they will come." And I was thinking, how many buildings were ever built that way? I could only come up with two: Noah's Ark and then Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, where they built a baseball stadium without a baseball team. And that didn't work out too well until this year. And then, of course, the Tampa Rays have won the thing. So it doesn't work that way. Kate never came to me and said that. It was the other way around. They have come. We got to build something. And so that's the real power of architecture in building. And from day one, when we did a comprehensive study, the first thing on our list was always, we need a community space. Now, for an architect, that needs to be put into program. And this morning, we had a breakfast up in the classroom there, and I was looking out, and somebody was saying, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm counting chairs." I said, "Why?" "Well, we told them we needed 300 chairs. There's actually 400 chairs here, so we've exceeded our program goal." We had a dinner last night. I was counting tables, because part of taking an idea, you have to communicate it to the design professionals, and we had to give that. But in a sense, that was not the heart. We knew what we wanted with the community space, and we didn't have it. And we needed a space for us, and I want to talk about who us is a little bit, to be together. Last night, Justice Kennedy came in, and I was one of the first to greet him, and started to show him around a little bit. And like a good Supreme Court justice at an oral argument, he posed a question, and it was, a lot of these public spaces are out there, and does it work? And it was a very serious question. And being used to being responsive to federal judges, first rule of civil procedure is pay attention to what the judge is asking. We talked about it, because he's quite right. That, we can design anything. We can have beautiful looking plans. And the question is, does this work? And that's not for me to answer. That's for us to answer. Look around. I mean, in some ways, in the program, it notes that my new job now is I do documentaries about Supreme Court cases. When I present them, I don't say anything. I've done my work ahead of time. I push the button, and if at the end of it people are talking about the case and excited and interested in the issues, I've succeeded. So there's a part of me today that said, just look around, and you decide, does it work? I could give you lots of stories about lots of different things in this room, and I may say one or two. Originally, those two windows weren't there over there, and I said, why don't we have windows? People should look into that. We had a lot of debate about whether there should be 1, 2, or 3 doors there. We ended up with 2. Hours of debate. The tile patterns. Joe Rondinelli is here. We had several plans. But a couple of things I do want to point out. Over here are the named bricks. Buck Ferguson led our campaign to have people donate. If you've had a brick, find your name. They're not in order. They're sort of randomly there. Very nice treatment. Took a lot of time and effort to get the bricks there. And so everything about this, lighting, the ceiling, the kind of windows, how the windows are treated, how we interact with the lights, aiming lights in the middle of the night. There's a lot of people who worked very hard. And if there's a mistake, if there's something not right, what I can say is we own it. Dick and I were there. We worked with them. If there's something wrong, it's ours to make right or to live with, and sometimes that's that. So here's the question, does it work? And the question is, it's a community space. What's the community? And I've been thinking a lot about that. It starts with the people who are here now, the faculty and the students, and it's delightful to see so many students. They probably didn't want to read about federal courts for Monday in my Civ Pro class, so they're happy to be here. I know exactly the feeling, I share that, but by Monday we'll be ready. And so does this space work for us now who are here in the moment of the Duke Law community? I'll just share a couple of things that have happened in the last week. 2 weeks ago, it was International Week. We had flags of all the countries. I could name most of them, but not all of them. There was one that looked a lot like Texas, and it turns out it's Chile, very much like it. So I was learning from my students, and they were sharing their food and cooking here. And we had 200 or 300 people here sampling foods for our international students. It was wonderful. Monday night this week, in civil procedure, we just finished reading Civil Action. We showed on the big screen here the movie and had pizza. It was great. Tuesday night, there were about 200 of us here watching the election returns. It was a very powerful moment in American history, and to share that with the community is part of what we want. We had lectures every day this week. A couple of months from now, we'll have PILF auction here. So many of the events, we're still learning how we can use that space. But it's been special. I mean, this has been a very important part of my week, this very space here. The dinner last night, this opportunity here. But what's another part of the community? Duke community, being part of Duke. I cannot tell you how simple the message was from the Board of Visitors to make this a Duke building. We weren't. Going back to Kevin Costner and cornfields in Iowa, it looked like we came out of Iowa as a high school. And so, everybody said, we look like an Iowa high school. We wanted to be a Duke building. And we worked so hard to do that. And the vision of people like Talman Trask, John Pierce, and the others who understand what a Duke building is, and we made that here. This brick is called Duke brick. And it's on 13 or 14 buildings around campus. The window wall systems, if you look around other buildings, you will see this same pattern replicated in other places that we, in some sense, we've given control for it. So we have become a Duke building. And most powerfully, putting this space right here. Before in our building, you could not see any part of campus. Our classrooms were interior classrooms. We had doors down hallways so you couldn't look out. Part of it was there wasn't much to see. We had been put on a kind of back corner, an outlot, if you will, but we're not the outlot anymore. Look out this window behind me. You see the Sanford School. That's what we wanted. One of my last, Dean Levi used the word patient in his description of me. There's not a single person on the design team who would ever have used that word to describe me. But there was a tree right out there, and I said, that tree's got to move. It actually is now over there, because we want that view of public policy. That's important to us. From up there, in a couple of weeks, you'll be able to look out and see the Duke Chapel. That was really important to us. We draw our strength from the Duke campus. I want people to drive by here and say, oh, wow, what's that? That's the Duke Law School. One of our Board of Visitors was checking in at the Washington Duke 2 nights ago. And the person said, oh, are you here for a couple of days? Jim Shafley. He said, yeah. Oh, you got to take a walk up and see the new law school. It's incredible. Wow, that never would have been said 3 years ago. The last part of the community is the Duke Law School community broadly defined. All our alumni, all those people who are associated with alumni, our spouses, the children, and the friends. And I'm so proud when they come back, because they are so proud of the building as it's become, because it does represent, this is the outward visible sign of something very special that's going on here, the part that Dick Brodhead talked about that's so important, our classrooms. And so when I look around here, it's intentional. There's a classroom. There's 2 classrooms over there. That wasn't because we had to do it that way. One of our original designs had this building off-centered, and we said, no, go right up against it. We want to integrate. We are as transparent a building as exists on campus, and that's very intentional. We want to be, we're proud of what we do here. We're proud of what we do as a community. We're proud of being Duke, and we're proud of all the people who have been part of this community. Thank you.
I'm Dick Danner. I've had more than one occasion to stand in front of groups over the last few days. This was really Tom's only second chance. Since I've gotten to speak before, I thought today what I would do is mainly just express, on behalf of both of us, our thanks, gratitude, acknowledgments, and name some names, and if we don't name your name, we still are very grateful to you, because I think Tom and I get a lot of credit for what we've done over the last couple of years in trying to manage this process. But we both recognize that it was indeed a process, it was indeed a journey, and we worked with an awful lot of people to get this done. And had it not been for their help, participation, and being patient with us, we never would have gotten this done. So I just want to express my thanks today. I want to thank Dean Levi for his support, faculty, the staff, students of the law school for putting up with all of this over more than a year in relatively good spirits, and I think the reward is the space that we now have. I want to thank President Brodhead for his remarks both today and also on Thursday when we had the library events. I was privileged last evening to give Justice Kennedy a short tour of the library, and he seemed to approve. So that was a good thing. Of course, I want to thank the Duke Endowment for their support for the project, Russell Robinson, the chair, who was here the other day, certainly Mike Goodson for the naming gift for the library, which we greatly appreciate, Stanley Starr for what he's done for the Commons, and all of these primary donors for making this project a reality. We always make note of the support that our deans have done in moving these projects along. Kate Bartlett, as Tom noted, helped push this project along, get it underway. David Levi has been very supportive, even though he did just walk right into it and had no idea what was going to happen. But I can also remember, we have to think about their predecessors. I can remember when Paul Carrington was dean and sitting with Paul and having Paul literally draw on the back of an envelope a drawing of how we could try to think about improving this building. And certainly Pam Gann, when she was dean, brought our first projects into fruition and completed them. And so all of these things that we're celebrating today really are built on a lot of activity over the course, a lot of planning, a lot of work over the course of many years. I can remember that we moved the books and actually everything else out of the lower 2 floors of the library during the first summer that I came at Duke. I'm not going to tell you when that was, but it seems that we've never stopped working on this building. We've never stopped working on the library. To move the books out of the library, we use a specialized moving company. It's called Library Movers of America. And the president of that company, Cecil Manus, has moved the books in and out and around this library so many times over the years that I think he knows the collection much better than the library staff does. So I want to thank all the people who have worked with us in putting this into completion, bringing us to where we are today. I want to note particularly a few. I want to note our architects, the team from Shepley Bulfinch in Boston, who we worked with very closely. Carol Wedge, the president of the firm, is here with us today. Jeff Freeman, who was our primary designer at the beginning. Tom Kearns, Joe Rondinelli, and Ken Gooditz. I want to note our general contractor, BE&K, many of whose folks are here today, along with their primary subs. As Tom mentioned, we had a breakfast to honor them just before coming down here today. I don't want to forget the people from the university who helped us bring this project to completion. Paul Manning and Pete Romine from the Facilities Management Department, Vice President Trask, University Architect John Pierce. I want to, of course, express my thanks to the staff of the Goodson Law Library for putting up with a year where they had to live across the street in the gross chemistry building, and for putting up with the move there and the move back here in good spirits. I want to thank also our communications office and our alumni and development office, especially for their work this weekend and also for the library events that we held on Thursday. And if you haven't already done so, please go visit the new Goodson Law Library. As Dean Levy said the other night, it's a new library. It's the old space, but we completely rebuilt it. There's a new reading room, a mezzanine that bring in natural light through several large windows, a new rare books room, new study areas, carrels on the lower floors, easy and direct access to library and IT services. It's the library we wanted, and it's the public space we wanted. We all worked together to bring it in, to bring it together. Everyone I've mentioned and not mentioned has done that. And I want to especially note, of course, Tom's contributions and also those of Catherine Hall, our building manager, who worked closely with us throughout the whole process. These are the spaces that those of us who study and teach and work at the Duke Law School need and deserve. They're worthy of us. And I think that's the highest compliment that I can pay to all these people who worked so hard with Tom and with me throughout this project to bring it to completion and to organize this celebration of the Star Commons, the Goodson Law Library, and the Duke Law School. These spaces are worthy of us. Thank you.
Good morning. So when I was applying to law school, I had no idea what I should base my decision on. And I had a lot of people telling me, just go with the rankings. And a lot of people telling me, just go with your gut. And lawyers being lawyers, I had a few people telling me not to go at all. So I started to visit schools, still a little unsure of what to look for, and they all seemed great, but they all also seemed the same. until I came to Duke. From the moment I walked into this building, the school seemed different. The people truly seemed different, and the energy level was different. You could really feel it. And when I went with my gut and started school here last year, I realized that I wasn't the only one who felt this way. There is a tangible sense running through this whole building that we're a whole institution that's not just here to be lawyers. We're here to be complete people and to become complete people. And I think it's really great that this community is committed to that, from the administration to the professors to the students. From the day law school began, it was clear to me that our alumni were committed to the same thing. This was obvious through the alumni participating in the ethics discussions on the first day of Lead Week, through the alumni serving as mentors to students throughout the school year, coming back to share their expertise as speakers on lunch panels, or helping students hone their skills during mock interviews over the course of the summer. And when I began giving tours of the law school for the Office of Admissions last year, I began to appreciate this in a different way. For the first time, I saw the almost total renovation of the law school over the last decade, and I'm really proud to show off our beautiful clinical spaces and brand new classrooms and beautiful gardens to prospective students each week. And just yesterday, I was giving a tour and had one student, and she said, I've seen a lot of schools already this fall, and I haven't seen a space like this anywhere. I think it's really great. And now, with the addition of the beautiful library and this beautiful commons that we sit in today, I know that the alumni remain committed to the same things that we're committed to at Duke today. It's not lost at this, It is not lost on the student body, and it's certainly not lost on me, that the renovations over the past few years have been incredibly student-focused. And this area that we officially dedicate today is the prime example of that. From the library to this commons to the cafe, it's all student space. It's the one-stop service center in the library where you can get research help and your computer fixed at the same time. Very useful when your computer dies during finals like mine did last year. And it's plenty of library space to settle in for the marathon study days that are approaching, with finals only a month away. And it's this beautiful space where we eat, study, chat, debate, and even watch a little TV between classes every now and again. And in truth, this has not been just any addition to the building. This space has truly transformed this building to better fit the school that lives in its walls. Every morning, I enter the building through that door behind you, and I can tell you that though this space is located towards one end of the building plan, this is truly the nerve center, and it's always buzzing with activity. If I'm looking for someone, I always check this room first, and I usually find them here. And almost every day, I see professors here sharing meals, coffee, or just spontaneous conversations with their students. And I even see Dean Levi enjoying something from the cafe every now and again. And that this space brings our community together should be obvious from the events that have already been held here, and Professor Metzloff highlighted a few. And the one I want to highlight is our new DBA event this year, the First Friday receptions. We didn't have a space before to bring students and faculty and the administration together for something like a casual happy hour, and now we do, and they've been so successful, and we're really happy with it. Well, I've always been impressed by the dedication of the law school's alumni to their alma mater. This most recent and grand gift to the student body truly moves me. It was Duke Law School's unique culture that brought me to Durham. That our alumni chose to support the school in this way tells me that they not only remember how special this community is, but that they're committed to keeping it that way. So to everyone who made this transformation possible, I thank you on behalf of the entire student body, and more specifically the alumni who donated their support towards this project. Thank you. Thank you for remembering what sets Duke apart. This community lived in this building before we had this space, but thank you for giving it the room to thrive. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, President Brodhead and Dean Levi, for inviting me to be a part of this significant occasion in the life of the law school. Whatever I may have contemplated when I came to Duke many years ago, I'm confident that it did not include standing before you today with the daunting dual responsibility of speaking on behalf of the entirety of the Duke alumni and introducing Justice Kennedy. As to the former, I arrived at Duke as a very young student. I wasn't yet 21 years of age. I had attended college at Hampton University, which was a small, relatively cloistered environment, as an indication of which I can tell you that the first-year co-eds had a curfew. As I entered Duke, I therefore had enthusiasm in abundance, but was perhaps not yet fully prepared for the range of challenges that I would face in the legal profession. Law school, as the gateway to that world, was a place where I was confronted with a new language and new cultural mores that had to be learned in short order. Duke made that transition possible. Looking back, the characteristic of a law school that most commended itself to me was its nurturing environment. Coming here was rather like settling into the bar at Cheers, although I would not have used that analogy to my parents. By the end of my time here, I truly did feel that everyone knew my name, and I theirs. I developed strong and lasting friendships with fellow students. As to the faculty, I recall with particular fondness a professor who would invariably intimidate me in class and later buy me a Coke and check to make sure I had eaten lunch. And for many years after my graduation, when I had the opportunity to call the school, the receptionist, her name was Margaret, would recognize my voice and greet me by name before I had introduced myself. But Duke was also a place where, in important ways, I was uncomfortable. A place where I was personally at ease, but intellectually provoked when not overwhelmed. Somehow balancing the academic rigor of legal training with the nurturing support of a true community, Duke Law School prepared me personally and professionally for the many and varied challenges that would confront me in my legal career, from government service to private practice, from academia to the judiciary. At each step, I have been grateful for the firm foundation of the legal training I received here and for the ballast that has been provided by the friends and mentors I found as well. Duke was, as it is now, a place where both students and alumni feel at home. Although, thanks to Mr. Goodson and Stanley and Elizabeth Starr, that home is now much roomier and far better appointed. I'm delighted today to be a part of the celebration of these new facilities. The renovation of the Goodson Library and the opening of the Starr Commons, a new living room, create spaces that will allow the law school to continue to foster both intellectual foment and enduring relationships for the next generation of students. Here with us to celebrate the start of a new chapter at Duke Law School is United States Supreme Court Associate Justice Anthony Kennedy. Although he did not have the good fortune of attending our law school, it is nonetheless fitting that we have the justice here with us today to dedicate the Starr Commons. He is a man renowned for his capacious intellect and his commitment to the rule of law, as well as his ability to range far and wide in his quotation of literary sources. He is a man who, in the eyes of many, is charged with ensuring that the center can hold on the court, eschewing rancor in favor of elegance in his rhetoric, and espousing a thoughtful and diligent approach to thorny legal problems. Just 2 days ago, I had the pleasure of listening to his thoughtful analysis of some of the challenges that confront us with respect to our criminal justice system. Justice Kennedy is well known to students of the law, of course, as the author of some of the most important opinions of the last half-century, interpreting the Constitution's provisions on personal liberty. He has, in addition, worked tirelessly on and off the court to promote the cause of justice and to educate and empower individuals to be active and informed participants in the democratic process. He was instrumental in the ABA's launch of the Dialogue for Freedom initiative and received, in 2007, the American Bar Association's highest honor, the ABA Medal, for his distinguished service to the cause of American jurisprudence. Justice Kennedy exemplifies the best of what the legal system can represent. In his 20 years as Associate Justice, he has demonstrated a willingness to learn from many and varied sources, to listen to wisdom in any guise it comes, and, paraphrasing Thomas Jefferson, to fix reason firmly with him in his seat. It is now my honor and privilege to present to you Associate Justice Anthony Kennedy.
Thank you very much, Judge Goodson, Judge Duncan, President Brodhead, Dean Levy, Mr. Goodson, young Michael, Mr. and Mrs. Starr, and my fellow citizens in a world that must always aspire to come ever closer to the idea and the reality of the rule of law. Thank you for your gracious introduction, Judge Duncan. The law, as President Brodhead indicates, begins with intangibles, abstractions, philosophical concepts. So it's always a pleasure to participate in the dedication, in the building, in the creation, as so many of you have done, of something that's real and tangible and palpable. And this is a beautiful facility. Last night, when I toured the library and saw the very proportional and symmetrical yet different configurations for the students, I thought it was simply brilliant. And today, here in this space, you can see the affirmation of the stability of the law by the strong verticals which frame a heritage and a culture, and which, as so many of your speakers have said, and which was the architectural design, to allow light to inform our work. Law professors sometimes, I haven't heard it too much lately, Dean, say, well, you know, we teach students how to think. Well, if the implication of that statement by the speaker, or the inference that's drawn by the listener, is that the law has some monopoly on thinking, that's both pretentious and simply wrong. But what is meant, I think, is that we teach our students to think about ordinary human affairs in a very formal way. Students come to your school, Dean, filled with idealism and inspired to work for the good of society, and then they spend an hour in a classroom being grilled by a professor on the meaning of a parenthesis and a comma. And they wonder, why are they in the law school? Maybe they should do something else. And then they go to the library and they begin to study. And we hope they encounter what Holmes called the secret joy of isolated thought, and find that this simple language we're beginning to learn is the window, the pathway, the beginning, the entrance to the world of great ideas. The secret joy of isolated thought sounds elitist, self-absorbed, maybe egocentric. But of course, that's not the purpose of what we're doing. The purpose of what we're doing is to bring these ideas, as the president indicated, into the real world. And it begins in the law profession on a court with discussing these ideas collegially among your colleagues, in a university with your professors and with the student body. And I saw that in the library last night when students were engaged in a study group conversation. And after these ideas are formulated, first by yourself and then in a small group of colleagues, you then bring them to the Commons. The ideas are presented as a way of proceeding, as stability, as a hope, as an inspiration, as a standard, as a guideline for the community as a whole. And my understanding is that in the Commons, your students discuss the ideas of the law, the concept of justice, the meaning of freedom, with students from other disciplines and other faculties and from other countries. And so it goes from library to Commons. And as the ideas are discussed and presented, they need further refinement, and you go back to the library. From Goodson to Starr, from Starr to Goodson, and back and forth. This is the eternal dynamic of a discipline, of a profession, of a learning that's designed to bring great ideas into the way in which we live. And it's a wonderful process. The law depends on stare decisis, this stuffy phrase, in which we rely very greatly on precedent. We really are commissioned first to teach history, to teach the meaning of human experience. All those books in the library, Holmes said, the cases are the story of our moral life. And we must learn that past because it's part of the language of the law. But I was surprised when I came on the bench. I thought, oh, stare decisis. I'll spend most of my time looking at precedents like a clinician would and tell the trial court, well, you made this mistake and you did this wrong and you did this wrong. And that it was a backward-looking process, working with the creaky joints or the dusty tomes of the law, whatever the metaphor might be. But I was surprised very soon to find out that stare decisis has essentially a forward thrust because you are bound by what you do. And the meaning of stability is that we look to the past so that we can ensure future expectations. And this was the magnificent dynamic of the common law, which took centuries to emerge. Remember, this common law process, the Anglo-American tradition that you mentioned, had to survive over centuries in which the distinction between science and superstition and magic and meaning and fiction and physics were blurred. The ancients did not have the knowledge of the universe that was suddenly acquired in the Enlightenment. And I was so fascinated that you, Dean, chose the word enlightened for your theme. Because we are still children of the Enlightenment. You know who the most, in a world that wasn't celebrity crazed, the 17th century, the most famous person, the celebrity of the 17th century, and for over 100 years, was Isaac Newton. He was the poster boy for the Enlightenment. And the average person hadn't read Summa Mathematica or didn't know the laws of thermodynamics. But this thing about the apple comes and it falls down because there's a law that the human, with his mind, with her mind, can discover. Emancipated us, it freed us. And it freed the law. Newton wasn't the only great enlightened thinker, but he was, as I say, the representative. And do you know who succeeded Newton as the most famous person in the world? Was George Washington. He was the poster boy for the founding. And the founding was a vindication of enlightened principles, that the human mind can not only discover laws of nature, but the laws that pertain to government, the laws that underwrite individual freedom, the laws that allow each generation to have a share and a voice in shaping its own destiny. This was the meaning of the Constitution. And this was the encapsulation of the Enlightenment experience. And this is what we understand the law to be. This is what we understand the rule of law to be. This is what we understand the underpinning of freedom to be. This is what we understand the basis for the confidence and the daring and the commitment to build these beautiful buildings. This is the rule of law. But as you sit here, over half the people in the world are not committed to that principle. They're waiting. The verdict is still out. There are 6 billion people in the world. Probably half of them live outside the rule of law. For over half the world, the law is an obstacle, not an aid to progress. It's a threat, it's not a promise. And this must change. And in a world when time is compressed, when information is available to all, it's simply unacceptable that we don't have a legal system in the sub-Sahara to support the introduction, a very basic system to bring water to a thirsty family, to a thirsty people. This is just one indication of the fact that we still must make the case for the rule of law, and we still must remember that our freedom and our security consists in the world of ideas. And it's that commitment, that inheritance from the Enlightenment, that work which we are still doing. These buildings are a tribute not only to the liberality of your benefactors, but to their commission, but to their commitment to these purposes. I was coming, I like to look at student bulletin boards, and I was walking along here and I was looking at the student bulletin boards this morning. And I saw an announcement that there's going to be a discussion about Nepal. Nepal is a place we don't think of often. It's a very small country. And not long ago, you may remember, they had almost a Shakespearean sort of a real tragedy where the heir apparent to the throne shot the monarch and then turned the weapon on himself. And then it was found that the legislature had absconded with all the money, and the only person left to hold the country together was the Chief Justice and his colleagues. And he was due in Washington. And then I'd heard that there was an assassination in Nepal, directed at the Supreme Court. 4 people were killed, but the Chief Justice escaped, and he came to Washington, and the State Department asked him to see me. And he came to the court. Judges check each other out, as you know, Judge Duncan. And he was a quiet, scholarly, thoughtful, learned man. And we talked, and I said, Justice, what is it that I can do for you? What can we do for you? And he said, you just keep doing what you're doing. You're a model, a source of inspiration to us and the rest of the world. Well, that was a beautiful thing for the visitor to tell the host, and I, of course, told my colleagues. But as he walked away down our steps, I thought, we're not doing enough.